So welcome to today's webinar. My name is Stuart Entwistle. I'm Training Manager for Osmond Ergonomics. And today's content is looking at display screen equipment assessments and looking at whether they're still relevant in today's workplace. So the content for the next half hour is just to look at what is a DSE assessment, so start at the beginning, look at what the risks are and why we carry out or why organisations carry out DSE assessments. Look at the new ways of working, so how we're working today, so whether that's location, whether that's technology, or as we're seeing now, sort of an ageing workforce. So this all leads to, are the assessments still relevant in today's workplace? So, and then look at sort of how we can get staff to reduce risk and improve well-being. And as I say, there's some free resources at the end of the slides, which will take you through to some useful information. So just before we get going on to the content, just a little brief introduction to myself. So my name, as I said, is Stuart Entwistle. I've been with the company almost 19 years now, and I started off delivering one-to-one training for end users who are receiving predominantly chairs, but sit-stand desks, etc. After a few years of that, needed a fresh challenge, so became an advanced DSE assessor in 2005, and have done thousands of workstation assessments of various forms over that time, and still carry them out today, because that's where I get a lot of my knowledge from in terms of how offices are changing and how the workplace is changing. And then in around 2013, took over the role of training manager and have been developing that area of the business since then. In terms of us, so I'm delivering this webinar today from Wimborne, just outside of Bournemouth in Dorset, but we cover the whole country. If you ever need to speak to any of my colleagues, then we've all done an advanced DSE assessor course, a 2-day course, and a 3-day ergonomics in practice course. So whether you speak to one of my installation colleagues, whether it's the customer service team, we've all done this training so that any questions that you have, we will understand the process that maybe the member of staff's gone through, and we will be able to have the knowledge there to answer any questions you have. And we do a lot of regular internal training days ourselves. Every 2 months, we have the whole company's in for training days. And it's not just looking at the next new product, but we take a more holistic approach. So a couple of the few examples on screen. So we've had dyslexia awareness training, looking at mental health, mindfulness. We've done advanced driver training, all manner of different things that I suppose come under the umbrella of ergonomics and human factors. So on to the content, the subject matter for this morning then. So display screen equipment, and are they still relevant? So the Health and Safety Display Screen Equipment Regulations of 1992, they came into force on the 1st of January 93, and they were amended in 2002 to take into account what they classed as emerging technologies. So at the time, I think that was probably those old laptops that weighed as much as a couple of bricks, probably had a battery life of a couple of hours at most. So that's what they perceived as new technology. But the DSE regulations consist of 9 regulations with a schedule of minimum requirements and guidance, which organisations have to adhere to. So the link on the screen will take you to a free download from the Health and Safety Executive website of the Health and Safety regulations for display screen equipment. So you can get that there. So these regulations relate to the risk management of those using any alphanumeric or graphic display, regardless of the display process involved. So if they're using a display screen, then essentially we need to carry out the assessment. So when the regulations first came into force, they related principally to people using desktop computers, although today we have a different workplace. Like any health and safety risk assessment, the DSE assessment provides a process to identify risks and hazards that might impact the health and well-being of a computer user. So it's a statutory requirement for all employers. So all employers have to carry out a risk assessment of anyone using display screens. And the assessment process provides a systematic review of the user's equipment. Apologies about that. So that's like the keyboard, input devices, display screens, software, etc. The furniture, so the desk, the chair, footrest, and so on, and the environment that the person is working in. So the heat, the light, the noise, air quality, all of those things. So any issues that are raised during the assessment are then highlighted, addressed, and training or reasonable adjustments are put in place. So assessment should be carried out when when a new starter is employed with the business, whether there's been a change of workstation equipment, a change of the working environment or the software, or maybe there's just been an increased usage of display screens. So those are the areas that the times at which we need to make sure that we carry out assessments on an individual. But all of this, even though it's health and safety driven, all we're trying to do is look after the health and well-being of staff, which then leads to continued, or they stay at work, they're happy, they're productive. It improves productivity for the business that they're working for. And we can look online, and the health and safety executive have statistics on there, but there are millions of working days lost through musculoskeletal issues, also mental health, whether that's physical or mental or psychological. So, all of these days are lost, and it's a big cost to organisations and the economy as well. And then we also have to look at presenteeism costs, which is something that is often, I think, sort of forgotten about because it's a difficult area to measure. So we have absenteeism costs, and then we have presenteeism costs on top, and that is a big cost to businesses. So in terms of what is covered and who is covered, so what they say is, who is a DSE user? Well, that's an employee who regularly uses display screen equipment for a significant part of their normal work. And in terms of what DSE is covered, well, I mentioned it a second ago, any alphanumeric or graphic display screen, regardless of the display process involved. So if they're using a display screen for regularly during their normal work, then they come into the box where we need to carry out an assessment. And in terms of what is covered, well, and say we've got the CRT monitors, LCD flat screens, which you'd expect. We also have laptops, but we have touch screens in there. So that includes smartphones, tablets, when it's prolonged use. But then you've also got areas like microfiche. I can't remember the last time I saw one of those, probably when I was at college in the library. But display screens in factories, a lot of the technology or a lot of the functions that we're doing in workplaces now are becoming more digital. So that often leads to someone having to refer to a display screen. And it's all centered around the user. So the equipment, the software, and the environment, as I mentioned earlier. So in terms of display screen equipment use, what are the risks? Well, as I say, the main one that we all hear about and we all sort of see, and maybe some of us have experienced, is musculoskeletal disorders. So MSDs, as they're often refer to a group of conditions that are characterised by pain and a loss of physical functions. So that could include lower back pain, joint injuries, neck pain, aches and strains. So those are the sort of things that we're talking about in terms of musculoskeletal disorders. If I carry out an assessment and someone says to me that they're experiencing some form of pain, but they haven't seen their GP or occupational health, then that is something that I would suggest as an assessor. But we also need to sort of be aware of, there's other areas that that can affect us. So visual fatigue, that's an issue, because when we stare at the screen, our blink rate reduces, so we can get visual fatigue. And whatever we're looking at is going to have an impact on our posture, so we need to make sure we look at that. And then also stress as well is another area that we need to sort of look after, both mentally and physically, because we don't work well when we're stressed, so we need to be aware of that. But in terms of other risks, I see the body as a soft machine. We're designed to be stood up and moving. That's what Mother Nature designed us to be. And these problems build up over time. So the body is made up of a skeleton, which is the frame. We have muscles which work in pairs to help us move and to circulate fresh blood and nutrients and oxygen around the body. We have ligaments which help to connect bones together, i.e. the joints. And then we have tendons which connect muscles to bones, and then the nerves in the body as well to relay messages to and from the brain. So, quite a complex sort of structure under the skin there. But these problems do build up over time, and that's where some of what I see where some of these problems are, because most of the time they're unnoticed by the user. So, for example, if we're looking at disc problems, and there are there aren't many nerves in the disc, so by the time we sort of know there's a problem with the disc, then it's a management issue, and we have to look at what we're doing to prevent any onset of pain, and we have to adopt good habits to reduce that pain sort of coming out. So, and quite often people will blame an isolated incident as to why they've got back pain. So they dropped a pen on the floor, and when they went to pick it up, their back gave way or started hurting, and they blame the picking up the pen as the reason why. But actually, if you looked at their lifestyle, at their working habits over the past years, you'll probably see sort of clues and bad habits which has been a build up to maybe their back giving out. So these problems do build up over time. When I'm with people, I try and sort of explain what's happening with the body. So in terms of how the lower back is affected when we sit down, I quite often get people to stand up. They can feel that lumbar curve with their hand in the small of the back. Keep your hand there, sit back down, and then you should feel the lumbar spine flatten. So we're increasing pressure on the discs at that point. We also have issues of static muscle load. So again, muscles are designed to be relaxed in neutral postures, or they're designed to be moving. They're not designed to hold a posture. So again, to demonstrate this to people I'm assessing, quite often ask them to hold their arms out. If you keep one static and move one up and down, after a short period of time, the static shoulder and upper arm should start to ache a bit. So that's an example of static muscle load. So these are the things we want to try and avoid. And also overuse of the tendons, especially sort of in the wrists and the hands, because tendons, they kind of work like brake cables in my mind on a bicycle, and they allow joints to move. But when repetitive movements are carried out, those tendons can become inflamed from rubbing against bone and sort of other bits and pieces in the body, which we call tendonitis. And if that's not addressed in the early stages, it can become very painful. It can cause weakness in the hands or the wrist in this instance, or we can have something that's more severe builds up. So I'd say these problems do build up over time, and that's the message I try and get across to everyone, that we need to sort of take a proactive approach to this. We also have the issues of sort of offices now. So, the office has changed a lot over the last 20 years, and I don't think the health and safety executive sort of ever could foresee sort of how much the office was going to change, especially in the last 10 to 12 years. Everyone had a desk, chair, landline, a CRT monitor, minimal laptop use, no tablets or smartphones. So, we look at sort of how we're working, it's quite easy to monitor sort of staff, and the advice that we could give was, for one workstation, and it fitted everyone, so it worked well. But now we have a choice of sort of how and when we work. We don't have to be in a physical location anymore. It's quite often now just an IP address. So as long as we can get access to Wi-Fi, internet, then quite often we have the option to be able to work. So locations can cover the office, whether it's the same office each day or maybe a regional office. These tend to be straightforward environments, as I mentioned, to sort of monitor and assess. But we have issues where people sort of end up working from home, or even the local sort of Costa Coffee or McDonald's. And those aren't exactly, or they're not always the best place to work. So how do we look after those staff and get that message across that we can't see? And maybe especially those staff who are not considered to be home workers, but are allowed to work from home when the needs arise, because quite often they don't have the appropriate equipment at home to be able to adopt good postures and look after their well-being when working. And more organisations are looking at how and what staff do, and are implementing agile working for staff, so portable devices, laptops, tablets, etc. VoIP systems, so soft phones. We can get remote access video conferencing. All of that helps with a more sort of flexible way of working. And then another aspect of being able to work in a flexible way is that working hours in some circumstances can be tailored to suit the individual. So generally we have more sort of flexibility, which often means a better work-life balance, job satisfaction, reduced sick time, which then goes back to the absenteeism costs. So we reduce those absenteeism costs, and we have happy staff and staff who want to stay as well. So excuse me. So then we also have generations. So they all have their different ways of working. And then also the younger generations don't associate with problems of old people. So all those aches and pains that the older generation get, the younger generation think, well, that's way off. I'm indestructible at the moment. So they don't relate existing behaviours to future issues. And then as individuals, what happens outside of work? This technology now that we use at work is widely available at home as well. So smartphones, tablets, laptops, a lot of people now have those as personal items, as we'll see later on in the webinar. So, so if we can work anywhere and we have access to portable electronic devices, not just provided by the employer, but personal devices as well. How do we make sure that we are improving and managing their well-being or how all the staff effectively? So if we look at sort of the technology here, these are just some stats that I got off of the internet from Deutsch. So 78% of adults own a laptop, and this is personal ownership. 68% of adults own a tablet. 85% of adults own a smartphone. And then 45% of adults would use their own smartphone for work-related emails. So, personal ownership has grown significantly over time. And then when we're using these types of devices, we often see these problems coming about. So texting thumb or iPad shoulder, we see a lot of neck and upper back pain. And one of the things that I try and get across is to get people to appreciate, or end users to appreciate, the weight of the neck and or the weight of the head, sorry, and how much pressure that is put on the neck. Well, I also hear of issues like phantom vibrations, and that's something that I've experienced over time, where you carry your phone in your pocket and you think it's vibrated, and then you go and look at it and nothing's appeared on the phone. There hasn't been anything. So, and then we also have issues of addiction. So we hear it with the younger generation, where they take their phones, their tablets to bed, they keep them on, and they're sending, or messages are being sent through, and they're being disturbed during their sleep. So they're ending up with lack of sleep, and again, that can, depending on the age group, that can be brought into the workplace as well, which has an effect on our productivity as well. So in terms of are they still relevant? I think they are. If we go back to Regulation 1 and we look at the definitions about what display screen equipment is covered, we can see there that we have the LCD, the flat screens that we know about, but we've also got the laptops, we've got touch screens, which does include smartphone and tablets. So anyone who is using a touch screen then for work-related issues, and that needs to be taken on board. But I think it also depends. We need to get that message across differently as well. So there needs to be more emphasis on the training that is provided during DSE assessment, I feel, so that we can get this message across to people that although this is being driven by the employer, in terms of well-being and how we should be adopting our postures we should be adopting when we're working, monitor heights and everything like that. But we should be getting staff to understand that this advice can be used at home and should be used at home. So when we are using our tablets for personal use, when we are using our smartphones, then this training should be at the forefront of our mind to think, actually, maybe I shouldn't be sat on the sofa with my smartphone replying to emails for work-related issues, or maybe I shouldn't be searching for my next holiday on my iPad on the sofa, because all of those postures that those devices are going to be put a strain on the body is going to you're just going to bring that into work. So it's not just the responsibility of a health and safety department. It's not the responsibility of occupational health to make sure that they are providing, I suppose, plasters or crutches to support people's bad habits. People should be looking after their own health, safety and their well-being first and foremost. And then should they have difficulty in doing that, then they should seek support and help from colleagues, professionals, managers, etc. like that. So, we should be taking this information away, and then we should apply it to wherever we're going to be using this technology. So how do we look at reducing risk? Well, I think, first of all, we need to look at creating a proactive culture. And we deal with a lot of companies where this culture is being put in place and it works. So then when it becomes a proactive culture, then it becomes second nature. People don't sort of think about having to come in and think, oh, I haven't set up my desk, or I haven't plugged in my laptop to my docking station. It becomes second nature. So it becomes a habit. And that's what we're trying to do, is make things a habit for people, a good habit. We need to make sure that we provide resources to all staff. around the healthy use of display screen equipment, making sure people are aware that what's happening with the neck and the spine when we're looking at something that's at waist level, or maybe how we work when we're sort of using our laptop flat on the desk without that docking station, or maybe we have a breakout area with soft seating and we think actually we'll go there for a bit of space or collaboration, but we end up staying there for a few hours. We need to make sure that there is an awareness so that people know where they should be carrying out these activities to improve their well-being. Posture awareness workshops work well. Now, we deliver a 1 hour workshop which looks at the risks, looks at how we should be having our workstations, our chairs set up and everything like that. And they're often combined with floor walks around an office to give one-to-one advice. So they work really well in terms of getting this message across. And also from having an outside company come in, we quite often find there's better engagement because they think it's not being driven by management. It's an outside person coming in, so the information seems to be received a little bit better. So once we've created that sort of proactive culture, we need to make sure that we manage that risk and make sure that we pick up any issues that may be going on with someone's workstation or where they're working. Online DSE assessment software is a pretty good sort of thing to look at. So it can be completed anywhere. So if someone's working at home, they're working in the office, they just go online and complete it. Normally within a decent online DSE assessment software package, there'll be training provided with that. And you can also set pass marks, so you can make sure that people have read and understand the information. It's consistent, so everyone gets the same message. Quite often it can be tailored to suit the specific environment the employees are working within. So we can look at online assessments, and then also we can build in tests. So people have to, do a test at the end of their training so that you can make sure that they understood the information. They can be tailored to suit different technologies, environments where people are working. So they're very tailored. And then in that you get an audit trail so you can see who we need to speak to or who you need to speak to when you're at highest risk, and I suppose at risk of going off sick, absent. So it's a great tool to be able to sort of manage that a little bit easier. We also need to make sure that we equip staff with the right equipment. So in the office, we need to make sure if we've got hot desking areas, shared workspaces, that the equipment that staff are being asked to use is adjustable, that it suits as many staff as possible. So we can have good adjustable chairs to suit shorter staff or taller staff. And then there should be training, as I say, provided on how we should adjust these chairs. If someone maybe height adjustable desking as well, whether that's sit desking or whether that is sit to stand desking, so that we can adjust working heights to enable people of different statures to sit correctly, or maybe even to stand, so that we get that movement throughout the day. If we're asking staff to work in a mobile context, whether that's at home, client offices, client sites, hotels, then have they got the right equipment? If they've got a laptop, tablet to be able to work safely. So laptop stands, maybe Bluetooth keyboards that will link to tablets and laptops. So those sort of bits of equipment with a suitable bag to wheel or carry this equipment around for them. And then also we need to make sure that the environments we're asking staff to work within are correct and suitable, fit for purpose. So we talk about dividing up workspaces depending on the type of work people need to do. So whether it's collaboration work, whether it's concentration work, we don't want to put a concentration area next to the call center area, or maybe busy, noisy spaces, because we won't be able to sort of get the peace and quiet to sort of think about what we need to do. And then making sure that when staff are using these breakout areas for collaboration, that is what it's there for, and not to be sat on a sofa type chair using your laptop on your lap for prolonged periods. So we need to also make sure those areas are inviting as well. So we can do that, making sure that, acoustics, so we can deaden sound, we can introduce colour, because that has an effect on our well-being, our mental health. Look at biophilia, so bring in nature inside. We see these plant walls appearing in offices, where we're trying to bring the outdoors in because of our natural affiliation with nature. So it helps to sort of with the mindset of our staff. So we can look at all of this to try and make areas suitable for staff so they use the right environment for the right task, and then we can actually start to reduce that risk. Right, so we've come to the end of the webinar this morning. So let's just see if we've got any questions that have come through while I've been talking. So I can't see any questions coming through at the moment, but you've probably all been busily listening and writing down notes. So while I'm just waiting to see if there are any other questions coming through, we'll just mention about resources. So in the slides that I sent through, we'll have some resources that will take us to posture guidance, stretching exercises, which are great tools to be able to put on intranets to enable staff to have access to that information, create that awareness. We produce a monthly newsletter, e-bulletin, which comes out on the second Wednesday of every month. You can see back issues and you can subscribe if you don't already receive it. And then also links to our website. So if you need to look at reasonable adjustments, then again, there's a lot of information on there, videos, pictures, dimensional information. So I'll send links through for those in case they're of use to you. And then if there are any questions after today, then by all means, my contact details will be on there. I'm happy for you to drop me an email or give me a call, or even the customer service team. So just looking at the time, we're just coming up to the 11 o'clock mark. And then there are no messages coming through, so I can assume that everything was fairly straightforward and clear. But as I say, any questions, by all means, drop me an email after today, and then I'll be happy to have a chat. Okay, well, I think we'll call that a day for the assessment. So many thanks for attending, and I look forward to seeing you on one of our future webinars. Okay, many thanks.